When Adam Grant was in 7th grade, he got into an argument with his best friend. The discussion went in circles until his friend finally shouted, "I won't talk to you until you admit you're wrong." That moment left a mark. It wasn't just about pride or winning an argument. It made Grant realize how deeply uncomfortable it is to admit mistakes. Years later, that same discomfort became the seed for one of his most important ideas, that true intelligence isn't about being right. It's about being willing to rethink. Today, Adam Grant is a professor at the Wharton School and the author of Think Again, The Power of Knowing What You Don't Know. His research reaches millions through his books, TED Talks, and podcasts, where he explores why the best leaders, scientists, and creators all share one trait. They stay open to being wrong. Grant argues that wisdom grows not from certainty, but from curiosity. As he puts it, if knowledge is power, knowing what you don't know is wisdom. In Think Again, he shows how learning to question our own assumptions can unlock better decisions, deeper understanding, and a more flexible mind. Moving from curiosity to courage, the next lesson is about learning to welcome being wrong. Most of us spend our lives avoiding mistakes, as if being wrong means we've failed. The author thinks that's backward. He said that when we make an error, it's not proof of weakness, but of growth. In his words, we favor the comfort of conviction over the discomfort of doubt. Yet, real progress often comes from stepping into that discomfort and seeing what it has to teach us. To understand this, the author tells the story of the Man Gulch Fire in 1949, a tragedy that nearly wiped out a group of firefighters in Montana. As the flames raced uphill faster than anyone could run, one firefighter, Wagner Dodge, did something no one had ever seen before. He set fire to the grass around him, creating what he called an escape fire. The other men ran, trying to outrun the blaze, but Dodge laid down in the burned patch, surrounded by smoke and heat. When the fire finally passed, he was the only one still alive. His idea seemed crazy in the moment, yet it saved his life. The author uses this story to show how survival sometimes depends on our willingness to question everything we think we know. What looks foolish to others may be the only path forward when old thinking no longer works. The author also points out that intelligence, which we often celebrate as a strength, can sometimes become a trap. Studies have shown that the smarter people are, the more skilled they become at defending their existing beliefs. Instead of updating their opinions when faced with new evidence, they double down. Their intellect becomes a lawyer, arguing for their prior conclusions. The author believes true intelligence lies not in quick answers, but in a mindset of constant learning. He once said that mastery is about remaining a student forever, recognizing you can learn from everyone you meet. When we hold this mindset, we free ourselves from the pressure to always be right and instead focus on becoming wiser. Doubt, in this view, isn't a flaw to erase but a skill to sharpen. Feeling uncertain, especially in moments of imposter syndrome, can actually be a sign of self-awareness. The author reframes that uneasy feeling, the sense that we don't fully know what we're doing, as proof that we're paying attention. It's a reminder that curiosity is alive. Instead of trying to silence that doubt, he suggests giving ourselves the benefit of doubting ourselves. When we allow room for uncertainty, we make space for new ideas to emerge. Mistakes, in this way, become data. Each time we realize we were wrong, we receive feedback from the world, helping us adjust our understanding. The author even jokes that when he catches himself in error, he says, "Woohoo, I discovered something." It's a lighthearted way to remind himself that being wrong isn't the end of thinking, but the start of rethinking. If we can respond to mistakes with gratitude instead of embarrassment, we start turning errors into insights. This idea may sound simple, but it challenges how most people live and work. In classrooms, offices, and even relationships, we're rewarded for confidence, not for humility. Yet, the author's research shows that those who admit uncertainty make better decisions, build stronger teams, and grow faster. They stop seeing knowledge as a possession to protect and start treating it as a process to refine. The author's central message is that embracing wrongness is a strength. It's not about lowering standards or celebrating failure, but about seeing error as part of the creative process. The next time you discover you were mistaken, don't rush to defend your pride. Pause, take a breath, and see it as a moment of discovery. That's the mindset that turns ordinary people into lifelong learners. After learning to embrace being wrong, the next challenge is helping others rethink too. Most of us try to change people's minds by arguing harder, but the author thinks persuasion begins with curiosity, not confrontation. He said that instead of preaching what we believe, we should ask thoughtful questions that make others feel heard. One of his favorite questions is simple but powerful. How do you know? It's not a trap or a challenge. It's an invitation to explore ideas together. When people feel respected rather than judged, they're more open to seeing things differently. The author draws on a method from psychology called motivational interviewing, a counseling technique designed to help people rethink through reflection rather than resistance. Instead of trying to convince someone to change, you guide them to question their own assumptions. A therapist using this method might ask, "What worries you most about that?" Or "What would make you feel more certain?" The approach works because it gives people control over their thoughts instead of forcing them to defend themselves. The author believes this mindset applies far beyond therapy rooms. Whether in political debates, family arguments, or workplace discussions, curiosity is the quiet force that softens resistance. A story that beautifully illustrates this idea is about a Black musician named Daryl Davis. Over the years, Davis did something most of us would find unimaginable. He befriended members of the Ku Klux Klan. Instead of confronting them with anger, he listened. He asked questions like, "How can you hate me if you don't even know me?" Through conversation and genuine curiosity, he helped dozens of men leave the Klan behind. Davis never shouted or lectured. He just kept listening until hate lost its power. The author shares this example to show how openness can reach where logic and argument fail. The same pattern appears in a story about a pediatrician who faced parents hesitant to vaccinate their children. Instead of lecturing them with medical facts, the doctor began asking questions. "What are your main concerns? And what information have you come across?" By showing patience instead of frustration, the doctor turned anxiety into dialogue. Over time, the parents chose to vaccinate, not because they were forced, but because they felt respected. The author said this approach doesn't just change minds, it changes relationships. It builds trust, which is the foundation of meaningful influence. The author also introduces the idea of a challenge network. Most of us surround ourselves with people who agree with us because agreement feels safe. But growth requires the opposite. A challenge network is made up of people who question us, not to tear us down, but to help us see what we're missing. These are friends or colleagues who tell us when our ideas could be stronger. The author thinks that if we invite this kind of feedback, we develop thicker skin and sharper thinking. He said that leaders who create environments where disagreement is welcome often end up with more innovative teams. People are more willing to share bold ideas when they know they won't be punished for challenging authority. Listening, asking, and learning become the tools of persuasion. Curiosity doesn't mean giving up your beliefs. It means understanding why others hold theirs. The author reminds us that changing someone's mind rarely happens through logic alone. It happens through connection. When we replace conviction with curiosity, we give others space to discover new truths for themselves. In the end, influencing others isn't about winning debates or proving someone wrong. It's about showing that you care more about understanding than about being right. Curiosity turns disagreement into dialogue and replaces ego with empathy. When we stop trying to convert people and start trying to connect with them, real change becomes possible. Building on the idea of curiosity, the author believes that the habit of rethinking should start early and extend into every corner of how we live and work. He said that most people are trained to value certainty from a young age, to have the right answers rather than the right questions. In schools, this often means students learn to memorize facts instead of exploring ideas. The author thinks true education should reward curiosity. When students are encouraged to ask why and challenge what they read, they learn that knowledge is not fixed, it grows through questioning. Some teachers are already applying this approach. In one classroom, students are asked to debate the claims in their textbooks or to rewrite essays after hearing different viewpoints. This process teaches them that changing your mind is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of learning. It shows them that new information can reshape what they once believed. The author said that when schools shift their focus from results to reflection, students develop a deeper kind of confidence. the confidence to keep learning even when they're uncertain. The same mindset can transform workplaces. The author often talks about the importance of psychological safety, a culture where employees can speak up without fear of being punished for mistakes. In some tech companies, teams hold open discussions after projects fail, called postmortems. The goal isn't to blame anyone, but to understand what went wrong and how to improve next time. This practice helps employees see errors as learning opportunities rather than career risks. When people feel safe to question ideas, creativity and innovation naturally increase. The author contrasts this with the fate of companies like Kodak and Blockbuster. Both were industry leaders who ignored changing trends because they were too confident in their old ways. Kodak actually invented the first digital camera but refused to embrace it, fearing it would threaten their film business. Blockbuster dismissed Netflix as a passing fad. In both cases, the refusal to rethink led to collapse. These stories show that even the most successful organizations can fail when they stop challenging their own assumptions. To build a culture of rethinking, the author suggests treating ideas like experiments, temporary, flexible, and open to revision. Instead of clinging to a single strategy, teams should test, learn, and adapt. He said organizations should reward curiosity, not conformity. When leaders invite questions and welcome disagreement, they create workplaces where innovation thrives. It's no coincidence that companies known for creativity, such as Pixar or Google, actively design systems that encourage feedback and open discussion. Their success isn't luck, it's built on the belief that great ideas often come from rethinking existing ones. The author also invites individuals to apply the same principle to their careers. Many people treat changing paths as a form of failure, but he sees it as intelligence. Life changes, and so should our goals. He said, rethink your path as you evolve. Instead of asking, what did I set out to do? We should ask, what fits who I am now? This shift replaces guilt with growth. The smartest move isn't sticking to a plan no matter what. It's having the courage to rewrite it when the evidence tells you to. In both classrooms and boardrooms, the message is the same. Progress depends on the freedom to question, revise, and adapt. When schools teach curiosity and workplaces protect open thinking, rethinking becomes part of daily life. The result is a culture that learns faster, innovates more, and fears change less. In this kind of world, learning never stops, and neither does improvement. Moving from classrooms and workplaces to the way we think, the author introduces one of his most powerful ideas, learning to think like a scientist. He said that most of us approach life in one of three modes: the preacher, the prosecutor, or the politician. The preacher defends their beliefs as sacred truths. The prosecutor attacks the flaws in others' arguments. The politician tries to win approval and stay popular. All three are driven by conviction or persuasion, not discovery. The scientist, on the other hand, is guided by curiosity. Scientists form hypotheses, test them, and revise their conclusions when the data changes. They don't see being wrong as a failure, but as progress. This way of thinking, the author suggests, can help anyone make wiser, more flexible decisions in everyday life. The author said that a good test of whether we're thinking scientifically is to ask, what evidence would change my mind? If the honest answer is nothing, it means we've fallen into one of the other modes. Scientists, by contrast, expect their ideas to evolve. Their goal isn't to prove they're right, but to get closer to the truth. In this mindset, every new piece of information becomes an opportunity to refine understanding rather than defend identity. It's a quiet but powerful shift, trading pride in being right for pride in learning. When this mindset is applied to ordinary life, it changes how we handle disagreements, decisions, and even self-doubt. The author thinks we should treat our opinions like hypotheses, temporary ideas that need testing. Instead of clinging to them, we should gather evidence, experiment with new approaches, and adjust when the results don't fit our expectations. This doesn't mean being indecisive. It means being adaptable. The scientist's confidence comes not from certainty, but from readiness to update beliefs when the facts demand it. This scientific way of thinking also explains why some innovators stay ahead while others fall behind. The author described how Steve Jobs, known for his strong opinions, was also willing to rethink them when the evidence shifted. During the development of the first iPhone, Jobs initially resisted adding third-party apps, wanting full control of the product. But when his team showed that an open app system would expand the iPhone's potential, he changed direction completely. That single decision helped transform the phone from a sleek gadget into a global platform. The author believes this flexibility, the ability to update a vision rather than defend an old one, is what separates creative leaders from stubborn ones. Thinking like a scientist doesn't make life colder or more mechanical. In fact, it makes it more alive. The author said this mindset is fueled by curiosity, the same spark that drives exploration and invention. Scientists approach the unknown not with fear, but with fascination. They see mistakes as data, not as personal flaws. This attitude can turn frustration into learning and uncertainty into motivation. When people adopt this mindset, they become more playful in how they approach challenges. They're not trying to win arguments or protect egos. They're trying to discover what's true. The author also points out that this approach strengthens relationships and teams. When we think like scientists, we listen more openly, ask better questions, and become less defensive. It's easier to admit when we're wrong, because being wrong is simply part of the process. Instead of debates turning into battles, they become opportunities to learn together. In families, friendships, or workplaces, that shift can build trust and deepen understanding. In a world where information changes daily, the author argues that thinking like a scientist is not just smart, it's essential. Facts evolve, evidence grows, and what worked yesterday may fail tomorrow. The people who thrive are those who stay curious, flexible, and humble enough to keep revising their views. This mindset keeps us from getting trapped by ego or outdated certainty. It helps us stay learners, not just believers, in a constantly changing world. Building on the idea of thinking like a scientist, the author reminds us that rethinking doesn't come naturally, because our brains aren't built for it. We're wired for certainty, not doubt. One of the clearest examples of this is the Dunning-Kruger effect, a bias that reveals how people who know the least often believe they know the most. The less we understand, the more confident we feel. Meanwhile, true experts tend to question themselves precisely because they're aware of how much they don't know. Confidence and competence rarely travel together. This imbalance explains why some people speak with absolute certainty even when they're wrong, while others hesitate despite having real knowledge. The author said the goal isn't to destroy confidence, but to align it better with reality, to be as sure as the facts allow, but not more. Another bias that traps us is identity. The author believes that once our beliefs fuse with who we are, rethinking them starts to feel like self-betrayal. When someone says, "I'm a liberal," "I'm an entrepreneur," or "I'm an expert," those labels don't just describe what they think, they define who they are. That's why changing opinions can feel like losing part of ourselves. Yet, the author argues that true strength lies in being able to say, "I don't know." Research even shows that experts who express uncertainty are often viewed as more credible, not less. Their openness signals honesty, not weakness. In a world that rewards confidence, the author suggests we learn to value humility, because being open to change is a deeper form of confidence. Our biases also persist because we lack what the author calls mental mirrors. Just as we can't see our own faces without a mirror, we can't spot our thinking errors without others' perspectives. The author thinks that's why feedback and diverse opinions are essential. People who challenge us help us see what we can't see ourselves. This is why surrounding ourselves with honest friends, thoughtful critics, and people who think differently becomes so valuable. They serve as mirrors reflecting blind spots we didn't even know existed. Without them, we live in mental echo chambers that only confirm what we already believe. The author warns that common biases like confirmation bias and the sunk cost fallacy quietly reinforce this blindness. Confirmation bias makes us notice only the information that supports our current views, while ignoring what contradicts them. The sunk cost fallacy keeps us tied to past decisions simply because we've already invested time, money, or pride in them. Both make it hard to rethink. The author recommends a simple antidote. Pause and ask, "Could I be missing something?" That single question interrupts the automatic pull of bias. It shifts the focus from defending to discovering. Ultimately, the author believes that overcoming bias isn't about becoming perfectly objective. That's impossible. It's about building the habit of humility. It means recognizing that our minds can fool us and treating every opinion as a draft, open to revision. When we accept that we all have blind spots, feedback stops feeling like criticism and starts feeling like a gift. Rethinking, then, becomes less of a struggle and more of a practice, one that keeps us honest, curious, and open to growth. After learning how biases shape our thinking, the author invites us to turn rethinking into a daily habit rather than a rare event. Changing your mind shouldn't happen only when things go wrong. It should be part of how you live, learn, and lead. The author encourages building what he calls challenge networks, groups of people who care enough to question you. Unlike cheerleaders who tell you what you want to hear, these people tell you what you need to hear. They challenge your logic, spot your blind spots, and help you grow. Leaders who embrace this mindset, who admit mistakes and invite feedback, create teams that are more creative and resilient. The author believes that when leaders show vulnerability, it gives everyone else permission to do the same. He also reminds us that the goal isn't to be perfect, but to make progress. The author said, "Aim for mastery, not perfection," a simple phrase that shifts the focus from flawless performance to continuous improvement. Every time you rethink a choice, a belief, or an assumption, you sharpen your mind just a little more. Treating opinions as temporary, like drafts or experiments, allows space for learning. The author often jokes, "You don't have to believe everything you think," which captures the spirit of this mindset. It's about staying playful with your thoughts, testing them instead of defending them. When opinions are held lightly, it becomes easier to revise them without feeling defeated. Rethinking also becomes easier when it's joyful. The author thinks humor plays a surprising role here. Laughing at your own mistakes turns embarrassment into energy. It removes the sting from being wrong and replaces it with curiosity. Instead of saying, "I messed up," you start saying, "That's interesting. What can I learn from that?" This shift helps transform failure into feedback. Over time, rethinking stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling like discovery. Whether it's through debates, friendly disagreements, or reflective journaling, curiosity becomes a form of play. Ultimately, cultivating a rethinking habit is about building flexibility into your identity. It means being confident enough to say, "I might be wrong," and open enough to learn what's right. The author believes that the most successful people aren't those who always have the right answers. They're the ones who keep asking better questions. When you approach life this way, being wrong stops feeling like failure. It feels like progress, and that's what keeps curiosity alive. After exploring how rethinking shapes every part of life, think again. The power of knowing what you don't know leaves us with one unforgettable truth. Changing your mind isn't a weakness, it's a mark of strength. The author shows that in a world obsessed with being certain, humility and curiosity are what truly move us forward. It's not about knowing everything. It's about staying open to what we don't know yet. Reading this book makes you reconsider how you handle disagreement, not just with others, but within yourself. Simple questions like, "How do you know?" or "What evidence would change my mind?" can turn tense debates into thoughtful exchanges. These small acts of curiosity invite understanding instead of division. The stories in this book, from the firefighter who survived by rethinking survival itself, to the leaders who grew by admitting mistakes, remind us that progress often begins with letting go. The author thinks that unlearning is just as powerful as learning. So the next time you feel the urge to defend your opinion, take a breath and ask, "What if I'm wrong?" That moment of humility could be the start of something extraordinary.